Hey, you guys.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome welcome to the joys of live streaming. I'm Steve Pallas, and welcome to my favourite time of the week, which is eSport Friday. I was hoping it would be after a Richmond win, after I paraded the Richmond jumper in yesterday's live stream, but we'll take an honourable draw. Cameron, welcome to you, and welcome to our guest for today, which I can't believe you're sparing the time, NIgel Smart, Chief Operating Officer of the Adelaide Football Club. Welcome to you.
Oh, it's great to be here in the COVID pandemic. We're all kind of isolating in a way, even myself.
Yeah, I wish everyone had $1 for every time they've told their kids to be quiet during a video conference. So it may seem strange to most that we have the Chief Operating Officer of the Adelaide Football Club on eSport Friday, but Adelaide Footy Club have got you actually own an eSport team and have since 2017. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the background?
Yeah, so we're in a very fortunate space with our football club. To paint the picture of entry into esports, there is a bit of a story. We have an AFL club. We have a 52,000 seat stadium at Adelaide Oval. We have 11 home games. We have 100,000 members. We technically, in the past, sell out that game. Sorry about that. So selling out the game is great. It's a great position to be in, but the revenue streams for an AFL club are pretty simple. We have membership and ticketing, and let's just say our business is around, let's say, 60 million. We have about 20 million in membership and ticketing. We have around 20 million in sponsorship, partnership, corporate hospitality, and then we have a distribution check from the AFL, and let's just call that 20 million as well. It's a bit lower than that. So when you've got a full stadium and when your corporate inventory and sponsorship is very good, what does growth look like in a stadium that's full? And where you get to and where is you have to put up prices, which is not really fair on the members and fans. And also, if you have a performance problem, meaning we're going through a bit of a restructure at the moment with our team, bringing in new young players, you might have a dip in performance, trying to kind of weather that, financially. So we started to look at, from a strategic point of view, how do we grow the business and underpin our football team in the future, and where are the areas we should be looking at? So one of those areas we did look at was esports, and I've been on esports for the last 4 years ever since, kind of workshopping the event. So every day I've spent on esports and gaming. It led to us doing a market scan of the Australian sporting and esports gaming landscape. We looked at what was happening globally and what's happening in Australia. We had about 20 entry points into gaming and esports that we could undertake. That was everything from sponsoring an event to having some association with a tournament or a league, to buying a team. So we went through that process of analysing all those entry points. We started talking to various stakeholders. At the end of the day, we did a lot of due diligence that led us to make the first strategic acquisition of a esports organisation by a professional sporting team, which was we purchased Legacy Esports in May of 2017. And Legacy is just not one team, but a range of teams under the banner of Legacy Esports, founded by 4 friends. One of them was Tim Wendell. But 4 friends got together and formed a team and were competing, and that's the team that we acquired.
It's amazing that it can go from 4 mates playing or gaming against each other to a team that's competing in what, where is this team competing?
Okay, so we have a range of teams that play in certain games. So our premier team is a League of Legends team. That's a game made by Riot Games. They make a couple of games, but more recently, League of Legends has been around for quite a while. They have 13 to 14 leagues around the world. The league here in Australia is called the Oceanic Pro League, which has 8 teams competing in it. Legacy is one of those teams. The team has 2 seasons, a season split 1 and split 2. Currently, split 1's just occurred, where Legacy were the best team. Usually what happens if you win the split, you then travel internationally, along with all the other leagues that Riot are running of that game, and you play in the mid-season invitational, usually in an overseas destination. And it's watched by millions and millions of people. So like even last week, Legacy were playing, and the viewership for their game was around 35,000 viewers online. So,
wow.
So they've got viewers from Australia, but overseas as well, that are wanting to watch the game. It did help that Riot were providing some free items within that game, that people could get anyway. So, but Legacy, that's our main team. We also have a Fortnite squad of 4 players. They live in Perth. One lives in New Zealand, so it's quite widespread. We have Dylan, or Frosty. He's the best Hearthstone player in Australia. And then we have Sean Kempham, who's a Melbourne guy, goes by the alias of Probe. He plays a game called StarCraft 2, and he's the best StarCraft 2 player in Australia, in my opinion anyway. But many of these teams and guys will play domestically, but also travel internationally to compete.
Wow. And are you looking at using the eSport team to take the Adelaide Crows brand and build that supporter base into a new demographic, or is it like oil and water, and the two probably may not mix?
Oh, it's a good question. When we started to look at the esports ecosystem in Australia, like, we're a big AFL club.
Yep.
And out of respect, we just didn't want to come in. And to be understanding, South Australia or Adelaide is around 6% of the market of Australia, GDP. We don't have too many business head offices there. It's a smaller state. So for me, it was one, being respectful to the acquisition of Legacy, but also understanding that it's a national brand. It's not a state brand. So we're building out Legacy as its own brand, with its own values, and with its own structures, to be successful within an ecosystem that's quite different than the AFL, but there are similarities at the same time.
So, and Cam, I'm sure you've got some questions which jump in at any stage, but the values of teams and clubs always fascinate me. What are the differences in the values of, just generally, not specifically, of, say, the physical teams, whether it's the Crows, men's, women's, and I'm not even sure whether they cross over in your context, or the baseball, which we don't necessarily won't touch on, but and the gaming, are the values intrinsically different or complementary, or?
Define values. What do you perceive as value? Is that a financial value, or is it an audience value?
Values of the team. I thought you were kind of looking at from that perspective, the values by which the team lives by and I guess behaves and operates. I was coming from, as opposed to a physical value.
Yeah. So we try and instill. We have a purpose line for the football club, which is "We Fly as One," which basically bringing people together to create great things. We've taken some of those elements and instilled them within the Legacy framework. And so within our socials, you'll see "We Fly as One" connected, to the team. But the team also is quite separated from the Adelaide Football Club. It's in its own entity organisationally, so it's connected. It has some support, or it has some benefits of being associated with the club, but at the same time, we're creating our own path, if that makes sense. So we need to be mindful that, like within the Adelaide Football Club, many of the staff that work in the football club don't understand gaming and esports. They don't play it, they don't watch it, they don't understand it. So even internally, that we've worked hard to try and upskill or talk to staff about when Legacy has an amazing win or does something extraordinary. We try and make our staff privy to that particular event. Recently, when they won the Oceanic Grand Final, we made our staff aware of it. But at the same time, if they're not really knowledgeable about the game or anything to do with the game, it's hard for them to conceptualize that. And it's hard for many people within the sporting industry that traditional sport, if they're not a gaming enthusiast, it's hard to kind of understand the concept that young people are gaming in large numbers, and not only gaming, but they're watching other people game as well.
Do you see that that line blurring much as we go into the future? The line between a traditional sports fan and an esports fan, is that changing?
Oh yeah, like if I look at our AFL squad, they all game. All the players generally, especially the young players, they're all gaming. As we go on, more young people, and look, there's lots of young people that game casually, but it's not their passion. And there's lots of young people that sport it is their passion. But you're going to see that every year that goes on, more young people are going to game and play, but they'll also be aware of the systems that are happening globally with leagues and tournaments and the monetization of gaming internationally. That, not only can they play in a casually, but if they want to play in a tournament, they can play domestically, or they can watch tournaments that are happening overseas quite regularly, as they can do now on YouTube and Twitch and a range of platforms.
Adelaide Crows is an elite, Adelaide Football Club, or the Crows, is an elite sporting entity, much the way that we're seeing conglomerates in US sport have multiple franchises, in UK sport have multiple franchises. Do you see that model coming down to community sport? Maybe not having multiple sports, but we already see, say, in AFL, netball being kind of paired together in certainly regional areas. Do you see gaming or eSport not necessarily going to the elite level, but being part of community club offerings because of this changing demographic?
I do, but it's just probably the way the community club or the club goes about it. Understanding that the purpose of a community club is probably to engage widely and deeply with the community, and gaming's an element of that. So if they can harness that in some way and do it as we have done, which is mitigate the financial or reputational issues that potentially could could be there. If they can navigate that and get the right people, then yeah, you can create quite interesting engagement within that community and bring new members and new engagement to the club that probably wasn't there. So, but it's very difficult for clubs to do that because one, their resources or volunteers, and their knowledge about gaming and esports may be on the thinner side, and it's about how to. Every year can go by, and yeah, more people will gain knowledge, but that'll take time for that to infiltrate the system. There's no doubt that probably there will be some clubs that have a couple of staff that are already operating or understand gaming and esports, and they can fast track it. So you'll see a few clubs that will do that, but it is challenging for volunteers to go, okay, let's just set up an engagement around esports. What should we do?
Yeah. Well, that takes us into the move of Adelaide Football Club into high school league gaming. So you've established high school, an international high school competition when we include New Zealand in that. So what was the thinking behind truly investing in the sport like that? Yeah,
it's probably one that when we acquired Legacy Esports, we ran the organisation as is for a number of months, but there was nothing formalised or structured within grassroots esports from a state and national point of view. So we then put a proposition to Riot Games, the maker of League of Legends. There were some operators operating in Australia that were running some smaller scale high school events, but usually state-based. The nationals were problematic because of distance and cost. But we said to Riot, we feel that we can build growth within a state competition that leads into nationals, and then nationals potentially leading into internationals. So at the moment, we're running League of Legends within, and Rocket League, and NBA 2K. We run state tournaments where high schools can form teams and play in a state tournament, be the state champion of that particular game, and then play online against other state champions that lead into the getting down to the final two national champions. We fly them to Melbourne, to the Melbourne Esports Open or to PAX, and then we provide a LAN event final for them to be national champions. So we do that in the three leagues: League of Legends, Rocket League, and NBA 2K. We have agreements with those publishers to run those tournaments and to use their IP. But the basis of it was to build out grassroots, to formalise the system that there is a pathway where someone can start within a team and progress, play internationals, and then connect that into talent pathways that potentially link to a domestic team that then may stretch into international. For the viewers, most of our players that play semi-professional or professional within our teams, if they're good enough, they will be picked up internationally. International teams will pay out the contracts or buy out the contracts of our players, and what they won't really, they'll negotiate, but if you're good and an international team wants to buy you, they will buy you. Yeah. So it can actually be a line within our P&L where we're actually selling players internationally.
I'm still waiting for my contract, but it's okay. I'll keep waiting.
It's in the mail, mate. It's in the mail.
Yeah. Oh, you could have gone with email at least. But I'm conscious of your time. I'm really conscious, given that probably one of the biggest games of the years outside finals in the AFL is the Showdown weekend this weekend. But I was also really interested to see that your football club sponsor Optus, and has been a long-term sponsor of the club, has become a really key part of the esports side of the club as well. What was it hard to get them to see that value, or were they looking for new sporting products as well, I guess?
No, like Optus have been a great partner. I started a conversation with Optus. They were interested in entering the AFL. There's no doubt that Telstra sponsor the AFL and are a valued partner of the AFL, and we managed to negotiate a partnership allowing Optus entry into the AFL. But at the same time, they were very interested in gaming and esports. And the reason for that is internet, mobile, data, young people, and even older people like myself. That consumption and then audiences engaging deeply and meaningful in gaming and esports is a thing. It's actually a thing. So brands like Optus who work within that space, they want to start to partner in a way that they can start to build that relationship and understanding of the needs of gamers, whether that's through routers, optimization, internet, 5G, technology companies. They want to partner and be a part of that conversation with the audiences that are engaging in gaming and esports. So Optus are a partner of Legacy and been terrific, but at the same time, they see it as highly beneficial for their business to be involved in a system that's developing, but they also want to mitigate their risk. So they're taking small and calculated steps to support the industry and the ecosystem. And it's in Australia, it is developing, but it's quite different. We're a large continent. Internet speed, servers, latency, they're all issues that in internet in Australia is problematic. And so they're conscious of trying to help the system improve itself.
Cam, did you have a question before we let Nigel? I mean, we could talk all day. I could.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've got so many. I do think it's very interesting that the same motivator that got Adelaide to look into esports is something that we've talked about a lot, about financial diversification, and by trying to find financial avenues outside of the pool that you have already. I think that's a fascinating concept that will intrigue grassroots sport a lot. But yeah, no, I have too many questions, and I know that we've
just
basically
on that,
run out of time.
Yeah, just on that, like we have sponsors within our esports division that will never sponsor an AFL club, or it's not necessarily their core market. So it's a really interesting one where we have some great partners. Intel, one of our partners, they're a global brand, and they're a major partner of our high school platform. And they want to be seen and be engaged in young high school students and technology, because that's where it's all moving towards. So we're very privileged to have the partners we do. And yeah, it's very much of diversification, understanding what the needs are for certain brands, and then meeting those needs with obviously platforms like a high school platform that we're developing.
Yeah. Well, Nigel, we're really conscious of your time, and I can't thank you enough for sharing what's turned out to be a good half an hour of your time on probably the day you could least afford it. So on behalf of everyone at Sports Community, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your journey and the journey of the Adelaide Football Club.
No, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, best of luck for everyone listening.
No worries. All right. And so that brings us to the end of another week. Until next week, thank you for being part of our sports community.